This happened only a few months ago. I'm Dr. Emily Carter, a physicist who spent years studying dimensions. I thought I was ready when we reached the abandoned Arctic facility. Surrounded by endless snow and ice, it felt eerie but exciting. My team was skilled and eager, ready to make history with a dimensional gate. At first, everything was fine. We set up our equipment and went through the old blueprints. The air felt heavy, but I pushed that thought aside. During our first test, the device whirred to life. Suddenly, it surged, rattling violently. I held my breath. Everything went silent, then a cold draft swept through, chilling me to the bone. The windows were sealed tight. I should have sensed something was off. The days dragged on in an odd rhythm. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My team's behavior started to change. One night, I saw Jake staring into the dark lab, his eyes wide and unfocused. I asked him what he saw, but he just shook his head, whispering, "Nothing." A chill ran through me, but I dismissed it. Maybe they were just tired, but then the glitches appeared in the equipment. I watched as reports scrambled and displays flickered. Tasha, who had been confident, refused to leave her station one evening. "I can't. We can't go." "Not yet," she whispered, her voice shaking. A knot twisted in my stomach. They were definitely more than fatigued. As each day passed, the atmosphere thickened. Shadows lurked in the corners of my vision. One night, I found Marco mumbling to himself. I leaned closer. "It can't see us, if we stay quiet," he softly said. My heart raced in confusion. What was happening to us? I tried to hold everyone together, to keep a grip on normalcy, but tension boiled over. Then it happened. We convened in the control room for another trial. An icy chill flooded the space, wrapping around me. My breath hitched. Machines began to flicker again. For a moment, I thought I heard a voice, faint and strange, echoing off the walls. Just as I felt the urgency to react, the loud crash shattered the tension. Startled and panicking, I dashed to investigate. I stepped into the lab, and there was Jake, his eyes vacant, fixed on a point in space. "It's here," he said, voice flat. I felt ice in my veins. It followed us. I turned, scanning the room, but it was empty. I wanted to scream, but words stuck in my throat. Panic surged through me. I could feel something watching, waiting. I blinked, trying to dismiss the rising dread, but it clung to me. I glanced back at Jake, who still stared blankly ahead. There was confusion and fear, swirling in me, like a storm. In that moment, I knew we were no longer just scientists locked in an abandoned facility. We had opened a door we couldn't close, and whatever was now with us lingered in the shadows. I stumbled back into the control room, heart racing. The chill clung to me, oppressive and suffocating. Jake had seen something that left him in that vacant state. I looked at the others, desperately hoping someone could help make sense of what was happening. Tasha was still at her station, fingers twitching above the controls, but her gaze was unfocused. Marco was whispering again, words lost in an echo of fear. "Guys, we need to regroup," I said, trying to sound authoritative, though my voice trembled. "Let us take a break. Step outside for a moment." Panic flickered across their faces. Tasha shook her head violently. "No. We can't leave." "Why not?" "We need some fresh air," I urged, but the need to stay consumed her. "What do you see?" Her eyes darted around the room as if searching for something just out of reach. It knows we're here. It's waiting." I felt a wave of frustration mixed with fear. "What do you mean it knows?" "It knows everything. The moment we open the gate." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "We aren't alone." The icy grip around my heart tightened. I began to pace, glancing at the monitors flickering between static and erratic images. It felt like the facility was alive, the hum of the machines humming with a frequency I couldn't comprehend, as if tuning into a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently. I held my breath, gripping the edge of a desk to steady myself. The shadows deepened, stretching unnaturally. "Marco!" I called, desperate for someone to reach back to reality. But he was too far gone, deep into his mutterings, oblivious to my voice. I turned to Jake, trying to read something in his expression, but he remained in his trance. Then everything changed. A loud crash echoed from one of the adjoining labs. My body jolted at the sound. "What was that?" I asked, adrenaline surging through my veins. The tension in the room rose thick and suffocating. "I told you it's angry," Tasha yelled, her eyes wide with terror. I had no choice. I had to find out what that sound was. "Stay here," I instructed, but deep inside, I knew I might be making a mistake. With every step I took toward the lab, the cold intensified, biting through my coat. I flung the door open, and my heart dropped. The equipment lay scattered across the floor, cables ripped apart as if by an unseen force. I turned to leave, but just then, I saw it. A distortion in the air, like a mirage, moving closer. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a shadow. It was something else, something I could barely understand. Cold dread washed over me. Desperate and confused, I stumbled back, slamming the door shut behind me. The echo of my heartbeat in my ears drowned out everything else. I had to find a way to get out. Whatever we unleashed didn't just want to observe, it felt predatory. I rushed back to the control room, and what I saw shattered my resolve. Tasha was gone. A sense of dread churned in my stomach. "Where is she?" I shouted, scanning the room. When I noticed the screen a live feed from the lab. There she was, trapped in a field of energy, her mouth moving, but no sound came through. My skin prickled. It wasn't just watching anymore. In that instant, I understood. No matter what happened next, we had to fight. We had to confront whatever we had awakened before it took us all. I felt the world tilt beneath me. Panic surged as I stood in the control room, my heart pounding against my ribs. Tasha was somewhere out there, held captive by whatever we had called through that gate, and time was running out. I had to act. The live feed flickered on the monitor, but it didn't show Tasha's face anymore. Instead, the screen displayed swirling colors, blues and blacks coiling together like smoke. They twisted and churned, almost mesmerizing, but I couldn't look away. I had to think. "Jake!" I shouted, desperate to snap him out of whatever trance he was in. "We need to help Tasha." He blinked, momentarily breaking free from his daze. What happened?" he stammered, confusion flooding his eyes. "That thing, whatever it is," I said, urgency in my voice, "it's got Tasha. We have to get her back." Jake stood, trying to shake off his fog. "I can't leave her, we can't help her if we're all trapped." My voice cut through the haze of fear. I turned to Marco, still muttering. "Marco, snap out of it." He paused, eyes darting to me, and for a brief moment, I saw clarity. "It's coming," he whispered, terror clawing at his throat. "It knows what we are." I took a breath, gathered my racing thoughts. "Listen, if it knows we're here, we've got to act fast." I gestured toward the door. "We need to find Tasha before it's too late. We can't let whatever that is take any more of us." Without waiting for a response, I moved toward the door again, the others reluctantly following. The air was thick with tension and uncertainty, but I couldn't let fear paralyze me. Every second we wasted meant another moment Tasha was trapped. I pressed my palm to the cold metal handle, hesitating for a moment. On 3, I counted down, looking at Jake and Marco, who nodded. 1, 2, 3. I threw the door open and stepped into the nearest lab. The smell of ozone hit me like a wave. Chaos greeted us. Equipment was strewn across the floor. Tasha's voice echoed inside my mind, a ghostly reminder of what we needed to save. I turned to the nearest console, hoping to find a way to disrupt whatever hold that thing had on her. As I frantically tapped buttons, I glanced back toward Jake, who was staring at the far wall, his eyes widening in horror. "What is it?" I asked, my stomach dropping. "Look." He pointed, voice shaky. I followed his gaze and saw a figure emerging from the writhing colors on the screen. It was vague at first, but soon it took shape. Something elongated and shadowy, like a human silhouette without depth or detail. It floated in the space between worlds. I felt bile rise in my throat. "No, no, no," I stammered. I grabbed Jake's arm, pulling him closer, and we both watched as the figure focused toward us, its movements almost eager. A jolt ran through the air, and suddenly, the lights above us dimmed. The monitors crackled and flared, the shadow seeming to pulse with energy. I instinctively stepped back, dragging the others with me. We had awakened it. It wasn't coming to observe us anymore, it was reaching out, and I felt an intense hunger radiating from that dark silhouette. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline surging as the ground began to tremble. But as I turned to lead the way, I heard Tasha's voice pierce through the chaos. It was faint, but full of urgency. "Help me." My heart raced. I had to choose escape with Jake and Marco or risk it all to save Tasha. I hesitated, torn between fear and loyalty, when I saw a flash on the screen, a way to reverse the energy flow. My decision became clear: we wouldn't leave anyone behind. "Not yet. Stay close, and follow me," I yelled, hoping this wasn't a fatal mistake. We had to confront this nightmare together. The air crackled with tension as I rushed toward the console. I had seen something, an option to reverse the energy flow. It flickered at the edge of my memory as an emergency protocol. I had to trust it and trust my instincts. "Jake! Marco! Help me with this." They stepped closer, our shadows blending on the floor. I felt the weight of their gazes, both fear-filled and desperate. We needed to focus on figuring this out while that shadow loomed just beyond our reach. With trembling fingers, I made my selections. The screen lit up, displaying a series of calculations and warnings. "It can't just be a simple switch," I muttered. Panic clawed at me. If we didn't act quickly, Tasha might be lost. Suddenly, the lights flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across the room. "It's coming closer," Marco shouted, his voice tight with fear. Glancing at the monitor, I could see the silhouette advancing, its movements becoming more defined, the dark aura swirling around it. "Stay focused," I snapped, channeling a shaky resolve. I hit a series of buttons, praying I was making the right choices. Each beep seemed to echo, a countdown to disaster. As the screen flashed, a surge of dissonance erupted through the room, rattling the equipment. "What did you do?" Jake yelled as the console emitted a high-pitched whine. "It's trying to respond to the energy we're sending out," I shouted back. "We have to keep it stable." The console displayed a warning, energy level increasing. "This is bad," I said. But I couldn't turn back now. Tasha's voice registered in my head, urging me to keep going. A split second later, the ground trembled beneath us, and the lights went out completely. Darkness enveloped the room. Panic surged through me as I lost sight of everything, even Jake and Marco. "Guys?" I called into the void. "Here." Their voices came, but they sounded distant, swallowed by the pitch black. My heart raced as I stumbled toward where I thought the console had been. "I can't see anything." That's when I noticed that the faint glow on the screen was still visible, although dimmed. It flickered erratically, casting a ghostly light across my path. I rushed for it, guided by the light and my desperate need to save Tasha. I felt a breath, cool and unnatural, brush past me. My skin crawled. "It's south too close," I whispered, my voice trembling. I moved faster, my hand outstretched to the screen, when suddenly the lights above us burst back on with so much brightness it stung my eyes. Just in time, I refocused on the console. I pressed the final sequence that would unleash the energy we had harnessed. The shadow loomed larger on the monitor, and for a moment, I could have sworn I saw eyes glimmering within its dark form. Before I could register what was happening, the room filled with a bone-rattling shriek. I threw my hands over my ears, to block out the sound, but it pierced through my skull. "Hold on!" I screamed as I slammed my palm against the emergency release. The screen exploded with light. Then everything went dark again. I gasped, prepared for the jarring impact of our reality folding in on itself, but instead, silence enveloped me. I blinked into the nothingness. Had it worked? My heart thudded in my ears, and the fear of losing Tasha settled heavily in my chest. Just then, the lights surged back to life, and the room came back into focus. But nothing felt right. The console sparked, and the figures on the monitor twisted, unraveling like threads. My breath caught when I saw Tasha appear on the screen, her face fraught with fear. But that wasn't all. Behind her, something shifted, something much darker was moving, driven by a hunger that felt both familiar and terrifying. "What is that?" Jake gasped, his voice barely above a whisper. I froze, dread clawing at my insides. "I don't know," I said, backing away, but it was already too late. The shadow leaped forward, and the last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed us was a pair of glimmering, predatory eyes fixated on me. I was too late to save her. And now, it was coming for us. The darkness shattered with a blinding light. I blinked furiously, struggling to adjust my eyes. The console was still buzzing, throwing wild sparks around the room. I caught sight of Jake and Marco, both shielding their eyes, trying to get their bearings. Did we make it?" Marco asked, his voice trembling. Before I could respond, a low rumble vibrated through the floor. Instinct kicked in, and I turned back to the monitor. Tasha's image flickered in and out, her expression shifting between panic and determination. The haunting shadow loomed behind her, swirling with even more intensity than before. I pressed my palms to the console, desperation fueling my actions. "Tasha, can you hear me?" My voice felt small, lost in the chaos. She nodded, but the flickering made her look almost like a hologram. I can't hold on much longer," she shouted back. The shadow lunged closer, a dark whirl of energy that sent a chill racing down my spine. "Jake, we need to figure out how this console works," I shouted, feeling the urgency grow. "If we can stabilize it, maybe we can bring her back." Jake scrambled over, his breath ragged. "I'm on it. What do we do?" His hands flew across the buttons, desperately searching for something that might help. The monitor displayed new readouts and chaotic graphs, but nothing made sense. "We might have to redirect the energy," I said, my mind racing. "It could weaken the shadow. Or it could make things worse." Marco interjected, looking nervously at the screen. "Worse than losing Tasha?" I shot back, frustration bubbling over. "We don't have a choice." Just as Jake started manipulating the controls, the lights flickered again, dimming before bursting to life brighter than before. I shielded my eyes, disoriented by the sudden change. I felt a wave of heat wash over me, combined with a sharp crackle of energy. "Something's wrong," Jake said, glancing back at me. "The energy levels are." I didn't let him finish. "Just keep adjusting," I pleaded, my voice thick with determination. A loud pop reverberated through the room, and the console shook violently. I had no idea what was happening, but felt it tightening around my heart like a vice. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it. A flicker of movement, something emerging from the shadow, reaching out like a claw. "Look out!" Marco yelled, but it was too late. The dark shape lunged at him, and before I could process what was happening, he was yanked backward, disappearing into the mass of darkness. No! I screamed. Panic surged through me, but there was no time to dwell. I had to do something. Tasha's face flashed on the monitor again, her pleading expression urging me forward. "Jake, faster!" I shouted, shoving him aside to take control of the console. My fingers flew over the buttons, guided by sheer instinct. "Hold on, Tasha." In that moment, the screen exploded with energy. An ethereal light filled the room, and I could feel the pull of the shadow trying to suck us down into its depths. It was powerful, pulsating in a way that threatened to consume us all, and then, just as quickly, a sharp crack of ice-cold air enveloped me, freezing the chaos in place for a brief second. That's when I saw it. The swirling energy around the console began to form a path. A gateway. A chance. "Jake! Marco! We have to jump!" I yelled, adrenaline coursing through me as I grabbed Jake's arm. He nodded numbly, but Marco was gone. "We can't leave him. We can't." But the shadow was reclaiming itself, strength returning as it lashed out toward us. Desperation fueled every movement. "Now!" I screamed, and we leaped toward the glowing portal, the shadow following us, relentless. As I felt the energy twist and pull, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling we were running, but where would we end up? I could only hope that whatever awaited us on the other side would be better than what we were leaving behind. The sensation of being pulled through the portal was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It felt like being stretched thin, like the air around us was vibrating with energy. I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting a hard landing any second. Then, everything went dark. I hit the ground hard, rolling onto my side. Pain shot through me, but I barely had time to register it. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing, scanning the space around us. The area was dimly lit, the walls shimmering with an eerie light that made it hard to focus. "Jake!" I called, my voice echoing. Only silence answered. I turned, frantic, hoping to see him or maybe even Marco. Instead, I was alone, surrounded by strange, flickering shadows. "Tasha!" I shouted again. Panic clawed at my throat. Where were they? The dim light brightened momentarily, revealing a wide expanse. I felt small and vulnerable as the shadows danced along the walls, seeming to take shape. I stumbled back, instinctively reaching for the console that should have been there. But there was nothing, no tech, no safety net. Just an endless stretch of darkness ahead. "Focus," I muttered to myself, taking a deep breath. I needed to find Jake and Tasha. That was my mission. The energy from the portal still tingled in my fingertips. Maybe it could help me locate them. I concentrated, trying to remember the feel of Tasha's presence from before we jumped. It was faint, like a whisper in my mind, but it was there. I started moving cautiously down the corridor. Each step was measured, the air thick with uncertainty. I could barely make out the surface underfoot, smooth and cold, like polished stone. The only sound was my own breathing. Suddenly, a flicker caught my eye. I turned, heart racing, and there she was. Tasha stood just a few feet away, her hair framing her face and a look of fear mixed with relief spread across her features. "Tasha! You're here!" I exclaimed, rushing toward her. But she held up a hand, her eyes widening. "No! Don't get too close," she warned, glancing behind me. My stomach dropped. I turned just in time to see the shadow surge forward. It was towering now, more defined, its claws reaching out as if it were alive. The darkness twisted, forming a figure that was all too familiar. "Marco!" My voice was barely a whisper. But this wasn't Marco. This was a grotesque version of him, his twisted face warped in pain. I recoiled, the sight sending a shockwave of dread through me. "What is happening?" I gasped, trying to back away. Tasha grabbed my arm, her grip tight. We're not safe here. It latched onto him when we jumped. We have to move. Before I could reply, the shadow lunged at us, snapping its claws perilously close. I pulled Tasha with me, adrenaline pushing us forward as we sprinted down the corridor. The walls closed in, flickering shadows chasing us, each step growing heavier. A quick glance over my shoulder confirmed the form was gaining on us. Where do we go? I shouted, desperation rising in my chest. There's got to be an exit. Tasha yelled back. We have to find the source of the energy. Just then, ahead of us, the corridor opened into another room, bathed in an odd blue glow. In there! I cried. We sprinted inside, hearts pounding. But as we crossed the threshold, the shadows stopped, snarling at us from the entrance. A low growl filled the air, vibrating through my very bones. We're trapped. I gasped. No, Tasha said, her eyes narrowing. This is just the beginning. A sudden realization hit me as I looked around the room. The walls pulsed with the same energy that had opened the portal. This could be our way out, I said, breathing heavily. But we must act fast. Before I could decipher our next move, the shadow surged forward again, ferocious and relentless. It was now or never. I stepped toward the energy output, determination flooding my veins. The shadows screamed, echoing off the walls. We had to fight back. We wouldn't go down without a fight. I reached for the energy that pulsed from the walls. It felt warm, alive against my fingertips. But the shadow wasn't waiting. It howled, a sound that cut through the air like sharp glass, and lunged forward again, claws glittering in the dim light. Tasha, get ready. I yelled, feeling panic but also a spark of hope. I pressed my palm against the energy source hoping it would give us anything to fend off this nightmare. The moment my skin touched the surface, the energy surged, filling me with a strange power. Now! Tasha shouted, raising her hands in a defensive stance. I could feel a strange pull at the corners of my mind, as if the energy was calling me to do more. Using that power, I forced out a wave in the shadow's direction. The result was immediate. The creature recoiled, screeching as the energy washed over it, pulling back just enough for us to breathe. What did you do? Tasha asked, her eyes wide. I don't know. I just felt it, I replied, trying to catch my breath. But it works. We had a moment, but it wouldn't last. The shadow shook off the blast, its dark tendrils writhing like snakes. With each second, it gathered itself to strike again. Tasha stepped beside me, determination on her face. We can channel this energy. Together. But we need to focus. I nodded, swallowing hard. Okay, let's push it back. On 3. 1, 2, 3. We thrust our hands out, channeling everything we had into the energy. A brilliant flash erupted from us, illuminating the room in a blinding blue. The scream of the shadow rose again, merging with the crackle of energy. The light engulfed the creature, its form flickering between existence and nothingness. I could see its twisted face once more, mirroring Marco's torment, and my heart sank. But there was no time for compassion. The energy we unleashed roared around us, pulling the shadow apart. Keep going. Tasha yelled, pushing harder. I felt her determination fueling my own. Just then, the walls shuddered. What's happening? I panicked. I don't know. She gasped, but we couldn't stop. We were committed now. The energy felt like it was pulling me too, almost sucking me into its source. And then I saw it, an exit glowing faintly behind the struggling shadow. There. We can get out. I shouted. We have to break the hold. Tasha cried, her voice barely audible over the chaos. The room was shaking. With one final surge, we sent a wave of energy crashing into the dark figure. Instead of collapsing, the shadow split apart and rushed toward the exit, a torrent of darkness pulled by an unseen force. "It's going," I said, both terrified and relieved. But the pull of the energy was relentless. The walls groaned, and suddenly, the floor beneath us began to crack. "Tasha!" I yelled, grabbing her arm just as the ground split further. All of this chaos was too much, and I could feel myself being drawn toward the blinding light. "We have to go now." With one last push, Tasha and I made a leap for the exit. As we crossed the threshold, the light consumed us, pulling us into its warm embrace, and then, everything went dark again. I stumbled as the warmth faded, replaced by an icy chill. My heart raced in the stillness. I blinked, trying to adjust to the darkness that surrounded me. Where were we? "Tasha?" I called out, my voice echoing into the void. No response. Just silence. Panic twisted in my stomach as I turned in circles. I could barely make out the outlines of strange shapes around us. They loomed like dark shadows, each one sharper than the last. I felt a tingle run down my spine. Then, I heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "Help!" My breath caught in my throat. "Tasha?" I called again, my voice trembling. The whisper faded, replaced by a low hum that vibrated through the air. I took a step forward, my feet shuffling against something like dirt and gravel. I had to find her. I moved slowly, trying to listen for any hints of Tasha's presence. That's when I spotted a flicker of light off in the distance. It glimmered like a beacon, urging me forward. Against my better judgment, I made my way toward it. As I walked, the shadows shifted. Some seemed to stretch toward me, while others recoiled just out of reach. My fear mounted. Something wasn't right. The air felt charged, heavy, as if the very space around me was aware of my presence. Finally, I reached the source of the light. It was a small, crystal-like stone embedded in the ground. The glow pulsed steadily, illuminating the area faintly. But there was something else, a figure hunched over near the stone. "Tasha!" I shouted, rushing forward. Relief flooded me as she looked up, surprised. "Marco!" she exclaimed, scrambling to her feet. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. "I thought I lost you. What happened? Where are we?" I asked, glancing around nervously. "I don't know," she replied, her voice steadying. "When we passed through, it felt like we were pulled apart. I ended up here, but it's strange. I can feel something watching us." A chill ran down my spine. "Watching us?" Before she could respond, the shadows around us began to shift again. The light from the stone flickered, casting unsettling shapes on the ground. I stepped back instinctively, feeling the weight of unseen eyes pressing in from all directions. "Stay close," I advised, reaching for her hand. But then, the shadows surged forward, drawn to the light. Wisps of darkness twisted and curled, encircling us. There was a thrumming noise, almost like a heartbeat, resonating through the ground. "Marco! We need to do something!" Tasha yelled, her grip on my hand tightening. I glanced back at the glowing stone. "Maybe it's a way out?" I suggested desperately. Suddenly, the shadows lunged at us, and I felt the energy from the stone resonate in my fingertips again. "We can channel it!" I shouted, remembering our earlier encounter. Tasha nodded fiercely. Together, we stepped toward the stone, focusing our thoughts on the shadows surrounding us. I closed my eyes, feeling the power swirl within me. Just as the darkness lunged forward, we unleashed a wave of light. But the shadows didn't dissipate. They absorbed the energy, morphing into something more solid. "Marco, look out!" I opened my eyes just in time to see a dark figure blurring toward us, twisting into a shape that was all too familiar. It was a shadow of Marco. And it was smiling. Run! Tasha screamed, pulling me away from the encroaching darkness. But I was frozen in shock as the shadow approached, whispering words I never wanted to hear. Tasha yanked my arm, pulling me from the shadow's grasp just in time. "We have to go," she shouted, her voice fierce against the eerie atmosphere. I stumbled backward, snapping out of my trance. "Right. Where?" "Anywhere but here," she yelled, glancing around for any means of escape. The shadows continued to shift and stretch, whispering taunts that echoed from every corner. I could feel the darkness wrapping around us like a web, tightening with every second. "This way." I pointed toward a gap in the shadows, where the light from the stone penetrated the gloom, creating a thin path. As we sprinted toward it, the air turned heavy, as if we were wading through water. The whispers grew louder, forming words that clawed at my mind. "You are mine. You cannot escape. Don't listen," Tasha yelled, pulling me forward. "Focus on the light." I kept my eyes locked on the glowing stone, pushing past the fear that threatened to consume me. We bolted through the narrow opening, the darkness reaching out like greedy hands, but somehow, we made it through. The landscape beyond the shadows was unlike anything I had ever seen. The ground shimmered like glass, reflecting the dim light. Strange vegetation swayed, giving off an unearthly glow. "Is this another world?" I asked, still catching my breath. "Maybe," Tasha replied, scanning our surroundings. "But we're not safe yet." Before I could respond, a loud crack echoed through the air. The shimmering ground beneath us rippled, and I stumbled again. I grabbed Tasha's arm just as she lost her footing. "What was that?" "Look out!" she yelled, pointing behind me. I turned to see the dark shadow emerging from the gap we had just escaped. Its form stabilized, twisting into an elaborate version of me, dressed in a tattered version of my clothes. "It hungers," the shadow spoke with my voice, now a distorted mockery. "And you, Marco, are the feast." I backed away, my heart pounding. "Tasha, we have to find a way to fight it." "Maybe the stone," she suggested, motioning back toward the glowing object that was now farther away. The figure laughed, an eerie sound that echoed in the silent landscape. "No matter the path you choose, you will fuel my power," it taunted, its dark eyes glinting with malice. Tasha clenched her fists. "We need to get to it before it attacks again." "On 3. I nodded, swallowing my fear. 1. 2. Suddenly, the ground roared beneath us, and a spire of dark energy erupted from the earth, nearly knocking us off our feet. I ducked, pulling Tasha to the side just as another beam shot up, cutting between us and the stone like a barrier. "Marco!" Tasha shouted, panic evident in her voice. "We can't stay here. We have to hold our ground," I replied, feeling a surge of determination. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the ground calmed. But it was too late. The shadow circled us, weaving in and out of the flickering light, its grin widening. "Your journey ends here," it hissed, and I knew that we were out of time. "Now what?" I demanded, feeling the weight of impending doom. "That's when I remembered something important," Tasha whispered, her eyes narrowing. "It's not just a shadow. It needs light to survive." "Yeah, but how does that help us?" I asked, bracing for the next attack. "Because we can use it against it. Let us draw on the stone again. It could give us enough strength to banish it." My heart raced. "Okay. Let us hope it works." "We need to hurry," I thought, as the shadow twisted closer, eager to devour us. The shadow flickered around us, its twisted grin growing wider as it tightened its grip on the space between us. "You think light can save you?" it taunted, echoing my voice in a warped, sinister tone. The shimmering ground pulsed beneath our feet, a heartbeat that felt all too alive, and I could sense the urgency surrounding us. Tasha and I exchanged determined glances, our resolve steeling. "Let us do it together." I shouted, and we lunged towards the glowing stone that felt both oddly inviting and terrifying. As we approached, the soft glow intensified, casting our shadows long against the ethereal landscape. I could feel the energy drawing me in, and as I reached out to touch it, it surged into me, spreading warmth through my veins, a stark contrast to the cold fear of the shadow that loomed closer. "Now!" Tasha urged, and I locked eyes with her, understanding flowing wordlessly between us. With one swift movement, we poured our energy into the stone, channeling every bit of fear, pain, and desperation into a singular force. Together, we pushed it towards the approaching figure, who recoiled as if struck. The light exploded outward, illuminating the area in radiant colors that danced across the landscape. The shadow screamed a guttural sound that reverberated in my bones as it bent and twisted, struggling against the tide, but it didn't give in easily. "You think this will stop me?" It bellowed, lashes of darkness snapping toward us, trying to break our concentration. I could feel the strain, the shadow clawing at my mind, whispering fragments of doubt. "You are nothing. You will become part of me." Tasha faltered for a moment, but I squeezed her hand, whispering, "We can't let it win. Focus." Drawing on the warm energy of the stone, we tightened our grip, amplifying our determination. The light surged, pushing back against the darkness. For a brief moment, I could see Marco for just a fleeting second, his familiar face hovering in the shadows of the grotesque figure. I felt a pang of sorrow and anger course through me. This wasn't just about survival, it was about reclaiming what it had taken from us. "See your friend? He's lost," the shadow mocked. "Join him, and save yourself the pain." "No," I shouted, cutting through its vile temptation. "We won't lose anyone else." With a primal scream resonating from both of us, we thrust our outstretched palms forward, unleashing every ounce of power we had. The burst of light erupted like a supernova, swallowing the shadow whole. For a split second, I could feel the darkness hanging on the edge of the light, its presence almost tangible. Then it imploded, refracting into a million shards before being consumed by the brilliance we had created. The deafening silence afterward was disorienting. Tasha and I stood breathing heavily, the faint glow of the stone dimming as the energy drained. I felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. The absence of the shadow was a relief, but at what cost? Did we do it?" Tasha asked, her voice shaky. "I think so," I replied, my heart still racing. But as I glanced back at the remnants of the shadow's presence, an unsettling feeling crept through me. What if it wasn't truly gone? What if something lingered on? The ground beneath us trembled slightly, confirming my fears. "We need to move," I said, pulling Tasha forward. But as I stepped away from the stone, another rumble echoed through the air, louder than before. "What's happening?" Tasha yelled, gripping my arm. "I don't know," I shouted back, the ground beginning to fissure beneath our feet. The strange, otherworldly landscape warped again, and I felt a sense of urgency. "We have to find a way back." We sprinted toward the closest area of pulsating light, which flickered unpredictably. Tasha's hand slipped from mine, and I whipped around just in time to see her get pulled back into shadow, another fracture in the space spilling towards us. "No!" I yelled, lunging toward her. "Tasha!" But darkness enveloped her, and suddenly, she was gone. Panic surged through me like a tidal wave. My heart sank as the persistent whispers of the shadows seeped back into my mind, echoing my self-doubt. "You are alone, Marco. You cannot escape." Dread settled deep within me, staining the remnants of my hope. I could barely breathe as fear coursed through my veins. "I'll find you, Tasha," I called out, my voice breaking. I had to escape this twisted place and regroup. As I turned to navigate through the shadows that still lingered, my resolve hardened. This wasn't over, and I wouldn't stop until I found her. The journey to escape echoed in my mind. Was it possible? The gates of uncertainty loomed ahead, a haunting spectacle of what might lie in wait. I had to force myself onward through the dimming light ahead, knowing all too well that in chasing answers, the questions would only multiply. As I ventured deeper into the unknown, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness hadn't truly surrendered. And perhaps the truth about what lay beyond the dimensional breach would unveil something far more complex than I had ever anticipated. After all, the shadows were patient, waiting for their next moment to strike. I knew I had escaped for now, but a part of me doubted if I would ever truly find my way back. And amidst this uncertainty, the silence that hung in the air felt heavy, filled with unanswered questions that taunted me from every corner of this new reality.